Okay, hi Vahist. Welcome to Great
Hey,
Diaries. Uh,
hey
so you
Dhruv.
already know, you already know though it's our in-house video series where we highlight the journeys and experiences of our great members. So it's great hosting you this time, and we'll just start with a short intro. So just take us through that, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you for having me. It's always fun to do one of these videos. So my name is Vahishta. I have been working in startups for a very long time. At Grid, I work as the content lead, mainly looking after strategy and coordination of the entire content team, but essentially putting out pieces of content that we feel our customers and potential customers would love to read. So these could be reports, these could be case studies, all kinds of pieces of content that kind of are relevant to the industries that we target at Grid.
Yeah. So obviously, since I'm also in the marketing team, though we liaise on a everyday basis, I know the work that we do every day. But like you mentioned in the start that you've been working with startups for a long time. So since we are a B2B firm, so have you worked like with B2C places also and B2B in the past? How has that experience been with startups?
Sure. So actually, yeah, I've worked both with B2C as well as B2B startups. In fact, my first startup job was for a college like newspaper kind of startup where what we were trying to do essentially was create this is way before like Facebook groups and all of that. So what we wanted to do was do a Facebook group for each college where
Hmm.
they would, write about whatever was happening, the katha gossip, like they call it. Uh, so that was actually, yeah, that was my first startup back. This was back in like I want to say, yeah, it was 2006 or 7,
Okay,
so
way
quite a
back.
while ago. Yeah,
Mhm.
way back, way back. And then since then, I've worked at B2B startups. So I worked for one in San Francisco called Sparked. And what they did essentially was predictive analytics for subscription companies. So this is around 2013 or so when I don't know if you remember, but like there was this big boom in subscription businesses, and they were like the hot thing at that time. Everybody was, everybody had these like subscription boxes that you could like essentially pay money and you'd receive like, whatever, everything from like chaddis to shoes to like anything that you wanted, you would
Yeah.
get like a monthly subscription box of it.
Huh.
So this is that like start of that whole trend. And what Spark did was essentially they had an analytics tool that could look at your subscribers' data and predict which ones out of those would be likely to drop their subscription. So they would look for like certain kinds of signals. So like in Netflix, for example, they could tell by looking at the viewing history
Hmm.
whether this person is going to quit the service or stay on the service. So yeah, so that's the that was the product that I was working on. And then I worked for medical startups in Bombay. I worked for a essentially what was a payments and billing app for doctors. So doctors have like a lot of very specific requirements. It has to be completely secure.
Hmm.
Yeah, the data is like health data, right? So it's
Yeah.
critical that it remains secure. So and a lot of doctors are using like WhatsApp or publicly available tools of
Back.
communication to talk to their patients, so that's not secure. So the idea was that like through the service that I was working for called Mera Doctor, it would be like a secure place for patients and doctors to connect, and you could also store like your prescriptions and
Hmm.
other kind of like reports and things like that on the app as well. So it kind of became like a one-stop place where your medical data would live. Yeah, so those are like some of the B2B and B2C startups that I've worked for. And now, of course, at Grid, it's B2B all the way. So
Yeah. No, I actually all of that sounds fascinating. Yeah. These are like completely very different fields from where I think
yeah.
I'm sure you've taken in a treasure trove of experience and like knowledge of the industry itself.
I don't
That
know so much about knowledge because I mean it keeps changing, right? Like, but I think I think the first thing that you mentioned is like it's like a toolbox of like things that I've tried, you know. So I know what like roughly the experience is going to be like to produce a video, to write a case study. Like it's a breadth of like different things that I've done in the
yeah.
course of all of these various experiments. So yeah, it that is definitely valuable. Like I see the value in it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, even I can imagine the value in it because, like you mentioned, you've been in, like, involved in startups which are basically utilizing the internet and all of the latest advancements in technology since the big boom in technology that we've seen. Like, if we talk about 2006, so that is the birthplace of social media. And then you mentioned that the
Yeah,
birthplace of subscription models, which is the de facto model right now for any tech
yeah,
product. And
yeah.
so how has this changing landscape that you've experienced firsthand, how do you see that changing more now with the burst of AI that is coming up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question because like if you think about it, like in 2004 to 2006 when social media, like you said, was just about like, you know, coming of age. In 2012, 13 when that subscription boom was happening, at the time when those things were starting out, it didn't seem um it didn't seem like it was going to be as big a deal as it turned out to be, you know. There was always this like, yeah, okay, it's cool, we are using it, it seems to be incredibly like it works for like a lot of businesses. Let's see, like, you know, how it's going to pan out in the next year or two.
Hmm.
It absolutely does. It have the potential to be like as game changing as social media or you know, subscription, the subscription model, right? Potentially, I think it does have potential to be that game changing. I think people need to people need to come up with like a really good use case for it. Like right now, especially if you look at like the general model type, like, you know, like your chat GPT and you know, services like that, which are essentially conversational bots. They do a lot, they can do like a whole bunch of stuff, but they are basically built around this core concept of being conversational. And I think that like the limitations of the platform kind of like work against that style of generative AI mod, like, you know, as a use case.
Yeah.
I feel that there's an opportunity to embed generative AI into existing products in a way that's like very seamless and is incredibly helpful to the end user. But does that like take the form of someone chatting with a computer? I'm not sure. I'm that's just like, you know, that's my reading of like where we are at. But I absolutely do think that there is potential there for something like game changing, for sure.
Yeah, like even I think so that there are a lot of AI, there are a lot of products which are including AI just because there is a new thing that is AI. But there is no exactly new problem that AI can specifically solve for that product.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there are these problems. It's that a lot of people haven't gotten to kind of recognize those problems just yet
Yeah.
because everybody is like still like fascinated by the chat aspect of it, of how
Hmm.
real it seems, and like, you know,
Yeah.
how game changing it seems, but it's not. Like just the chat part alone isn't game changing. It's what you do with the engine that's behind that.
True, true. So how, like, we've talked about like your experience and the new things that are coming up in this field. What does a day in your life as a content lead, as planning and strategizing B2B marketing, what does a day in your life look like?
To be honest, it depends on what part of the year we are at. Like, okay, so like right now, off late, it's been a lot more heavy. Like we are planning the activities for the year to come. We are planning how the team is working, and what changes we want to make. It's like it's very much a time of both reflection and also forward looking. So my days are mainly meetings, and mainly documentation right now. Once this once this phase is over, however, and we move into like solid like execution stage, then it's more, I try to divide my day up into like three equal parts of like working time. Mornings are usually for like coordination and communication. So, we have our syncs. Usually everything is over by like 1 p.m. The second kind of third of the day is usually writing time. So I usually have, I'm writing the newsletter for Grid this month. So, I'll be working on that in the second half. So mainly like creative things where like, if we have to do a video, it's usually the second third of the day. So those kind of activities usually in that middle period. And then towards the end of the day, I kind of save for like admin and work where I can do the work, but my mind is kind of a little free to like just go over what's going on, and what I've been up to, and kind of like silent background processing. Those kind of tasks. Well, yeah, I mean like back burner stuff, just keep it there, simmering, it's going on, you don't need to have an outcome necessarily right now. So that's the goal of thinking about it that way.
And okay, so now that we know that you have been constantly involved in tech for a long time, so this is an informal question. What are your 5 most used apps or 5 services that you just can't live without?
Are you talking like from a work perspective or like my entire life, like any
like your individual perspective?
Okay, so 5 apps or programs. I'm going to include like programs in that. Number 1, I guess, would be Steam, because all my games are on it. Okay.
Yeah.
What else? I want to say like, yeah, obviously the Google Suite, like because photos, mail, everything lives over there. So that would, I guess, be number 2. I'm including YouTube Music in that. So music is taken care of. What else? What are the other big services? I think this is like kind of like very indicative of how monopolized the web has become, because actually like all my games are on one platform. All my communication is on one platform. That's quite sad. But I just thought of another one. So I use Mastodon, and I use Lemmy for like my replacements for essentially Twitter and Reddit. So those are like kind of niche apps, but the community is like really small, but they're growing very quickly. So those are good ones. I'm also now using Piped Video, which is a replacement for YouTube. It's not a replacement as in it uses the YouTube API, but it completely gets rid of ads, and you can even set it so that like, on YouTubers channels, when they advertise like, okay, subscribe, or like, click the bell icon or whatever it is, it cuts that out also.
Cuts that out.
So you just see like, only the content of the video without all the advertising fluff.
There's an app.
Yeah, so that's 5. Yeah.
There's an app called Grey J. It's
Grey J.
Yeah, Grey J. It's by Louis Rossmann. If you know, he's a YouTuber and a right to repair activist.
Okay.
So he helped co-develop that app, and it also essentially takes out all of the ads from YouTube, but it goes beyond that in a sense that it allows you to follow creators across platforms on one app and never miss any new content from them, completely ad-free in just one place.
Array. Okay, cool. I'm gonna check this out. Is it mainly like just for creators, or is it like more like is it wider than that?
It's wider than that. So anybody who's publishing video on an online platform,
right, got it,
that can be accessed via this.
Right,
got it. This also includes like Twitch and other streaming platforms also.
Amazing. Okay, cool. How do you spell it? Grey and then just the letter J, or Jay or
Jay.
what? Like, how do you spell it? Jay. Grey. Grey. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I'll look it up.
yeah. Because you piqued that interest, so I thought.
For sure. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I guess that was it. It was really nice talking to
Cool.
you, Vaisht. And I
Same.
actually got information about you that I did not even know before this, and I'm ashamed to say that because I talk to you every day.
Yeah,
um,
but this video setting is like different. Like it brings out different sides of us.
yeah, that's true. That's true, and I've heard that from everybody who has been hosted on Great Diaries. So yeah,
Amazing.
hoping to see your episode on social media really soon. Look out for it.
Absolutely. I
It
will look
comes
out
out
for
on
it. Yeah.
YouTube first this week.
Amazing. Cool.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you
Dhruv.
so much
Thank
for
you.
joining, Vaisht.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.